Ian Jackson is gone after 1 year at North Carolina. Not all that shocking. But gone to a different school? That I did not see coming.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. The college basketball season is officially over. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and you are joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch to get your Tuesday started the right way. Special shout out to all of you everydayers, all of the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, our great insiders. It's great to be with you all. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I tell you guys what, I thought Houston was going to be our 2025 national champions. They had that game going, and then Florida just figured it out, man. Even without Walter Clayton having a good game. Crazy, crazy stuff. Here's what we got to talk about today. I was already with several different portal things we were going to talk about, looking at Rob Wright from Baylor entering the transfer portal, looking at Xavion Lee a little bit more in depth. But then Ian Jackson co-opted everything when he decided to enter the transfer portal. I saw it first reported by Jeff Borzello of ESPN. So we'll unpack that, what it means, the good, the bad. We'll talk about what's next for Carolina following this news. And then at the end of today's show, we're actually going to look ahead at the non-conference schedule because we've had kind of a flurry of announcements of non-con games in recent days. So I want to begin to unpack that. Yes, I know it's only April 8th, but that news is already out there. Okay. So let's set the scene. Can you go back with me a couple days to Friday? On Friday, we get great news. Henry Versar is transferring from Arizona to North Carolina. Yeah, we love it. Then on Saturday, if Carolina's not going to win, we're going to delight in others' misery because we just want Duke to not win at that point. I think that's a fair thing to happen. And that's why I was cheering for Houston on Monday night, because it's like, hey, you guys took care of us. I'm going to now cheer for you, right? And then Ian happened on Monday afternoon. Ian Jackson entering the transfer portal. And I joked about it in the cold open, but it's like we always expected this. It's like Ian Jackson will be in Chapel Hill for 1 year, and then he's going to be off to the NBA. And then his draft stock has taken a bit of a hit. But I thought, he's probably still going to be gone. And now he is. But instead of NBA, he's off to another school, entering the transfer portal. Of course, we got to entertain the possibility that Ian could always come back. Seth did it last offseason, Seth Trimble. Jay Williams even opined on Twitter on Monday that maybe it was a play to get more, kind of like Flory Badunga from Kansas, who is going back to Kansas now, right? Like all of that is possible. But Ian gone to another school. It's hard to think about, in the same way of Caleb Love being in an Arizona uniform. That took me a while to get used to. Or Garrison Brooks at Mississippi State, or just others like that. And it's funny I mentioned Caleb Love because I feel like there was a bit of some Caleb Love in Ian Jackson at times. Ian, Captain Jack, is the third transfer out of Carolina this offseason. Obviously, Elliott is off to Michigan. That's another one that's going to be tough to watch in a different uniform. J-Wash is off to Vandy to join T-Nick. Classmates reunited. I joked the other day that we basically, since they both went to Vandy, that we basically traded them for Van Allen Lubin, similar to how we traded Caleb Love for Henry Versar. With the Ian Jackson news, I find myself conflicted for a multitude of reasons. Let me just say first, I'm not conflicted in any way of like, good, get out of here. He's a Tar Heel. Ian Jackson is a Tar Heel. I don't care where he goes, what he does. He's part of this family. And so that's part of the confliction right out of the gate is you hate to see somebody that's part of your family go be part of another family, right? It's like, this is probably not the best analogy, but it's like you raise somebody and then they go off and get married and now they're part of somebody else's family too. Like, it's like you got to share them now, which is Portal. Like that's the Portal. There it is. Okay. With Ian, here's why I'm conflicted from a purely basketball standpoint. The good. He's a great scorer. Sometimes. And by that, I mean, if you go look at offensive rating for Carolina this past offseason, you think, man, I bet Ian's at the top of the list or close to it in terms of offensive rating. That would be incorrect of an assumption of you. The only players that had a worse offensive rating than Ian Jackson this year were Cade Tyson and Elliot Cadeau. Yeah, that's real. But he did have, as a freshman, 8 games of 20 or more points. That's great. That's really, really strong stuff for a freshman. Another thing I thought was really impressive from Ian this year is I expected more inconsistency from 3. He shot 39.5% from 3 this season, 60 out of 152. Wildly better than I thought it would be. Cooled off down the stretch, but still really, really good. The other thing is there are several games that Ian just straight up won, especially as RJ was struggling at times, as Seth was out of the lineup with his injury. Man, Carolina in the stretch where Ian went so hard, Carolina won, I think, all but one of those games. And that's the other thing that's good. He went through this crazy stretch, Ian did, where he had 18 or more points in 7 straight games. And he had 20 or more points in 6 of those 7 games. I mean, it was insane. But that streak ended on January 15th. That was the last day of scoring 20 or more points. From January 16th, the next day on, for the final 19 games of the season, Ian had just 1 more 20-plus point game and just 3 more that were 19 or more out of the final 19 games. Now, some of that is opportunity because he wasn't getting as many minutes, but part of why he wasn't getting as many minutes is because he was not contributing at the same level. Wasn't hitting, all sorts of stuff like that. So, and also in that stretch of the final 19 games of the season, I should say, and this is the yin and the yang of it, he had 13 single-digit scoring performances out of those 19 games, including a goose egg or 2. So that's the good mixed in with a little bit of the bad. Here's a couple other things on the bad. This is, again, part of my confliction. We worried about his defense coming in, and that proved true. The only rotation players who were worse than Ian Jackson in defensive rating this season were nobody. No part of the regular rotation had a worse defensive rating than did Drake Powell, than did Ian Jackson this season. Another thing on the bad, I'm still kind of figuring it out, or trying to. When Ian's shot wasn't falling, he was contributing blank. I don't know what that is. A lot of happiness, like a megawatt smile, dude. Love it. Absolutely. But in things like that, it's like in 25 of his 36 games, he had 3 or fewer rebounds. Just twice in his young career did Ian have more than 2 assists, and that was 2 games where he had 3. He had 32 assists in total, but 44 turnovers, so had a negative assist to turnover ratio. And it's just things like that where it's like, it's like I say all that, and I'm not going to ever say I don't want an Ian Jackson on my team, but I do want somebody with a higher floor. Like I could live with a lower ceiling if I had a higher floor. If I knew game in and game out, I'm getting 9 to 11 points, 3.5 boards, 2.5 assists, and less than a turnover. Yeah, absolutely. But the floor wasn't there for Ian. It was inconsistent. And when the scoring wasn't there, I don't think he added much. And I think that's why his time dwindled as the season went on. And that's part of it too, is like I want somebody that does more. I want somebody that does more than just score. That Iverson model is dead. So the question naturally becomes, whose fault is this that Carolina loses this 5-star Ian Jackson? I think there's blame to be shared in multiple venues. And I want to start with the NCAA, because they've made this whole thing that leads Ian Jackson and people all over the country to transfer without good regulation around it, without helpful or healthy regulation around it. That's on the NCAA, because as I've said, and I'll continue to say, they drug their feet and they didn't put into place what could have really helped this thing, whatever that was. And this is a symptom of that bigger problem. So the first blame for me lies with the NCAA. Secondly, it lies with the money. Again, because the NCAA didn't get out ahead of not only the transfer portal well, but also NIL well. The money is just wherever. And for me, a big part of this is I'm imagining that Carolina, and we don't have this news publicly, and I don't know that we ever will, but I'm guessing Ian is seeing bigger money elsewhere and is chasing it. And I don't know that you can blame him, because of the parameters or lack thereof that have been put around this. I think the money is partly to blame. I think Ian's own processing, but also the processing of those around him, are to blame. And here's what I mean. Ian Jackson came in and it was a definite that he was going to be a one and done. I'm sure he had that thought process in his head, like, no matter what happens, I'm going to be out the door. It is got to be difficult, and I've never been in that situation, but it's got to be next to impossible to have that mindset for a long time, have the late December and January that you did, and then draft stock go down the tube. It's got to be hard to mentally overcome, like, oh, I actually am going to need to stay in school. That's a thing. And so when you definitely think you're going to be one and done, and you got to change that mindset, that's tough to overcome mentally. I think opportunity was to blame. And by that, I mean, like, I don't know that he thought he had enough, and perhaps he didn't think he would have enough more in the upcoming season. Although I think he definitely had a shot at being the starting 2 guard. But as you heard Pat Kilby say on yesterday's show, he didn't think he should start with Jonathan Powell starting ahead of him. This past season, he took the second most field goal attempts on the team. That seems like opportunity enough to me. But he was 5th in minutes played, both total and minutes per game average. That's a reality. I think another thing to blame is the backcourt logjam. There was RJ Davis, reigning ACC Player of the Year. There was Elliot Cadeau. There was Seth Trimble, and there was Ian Jackson. There was a possibility where that logjam didn't really matter, because all of these guys are able to play together, whether 3 of them at a time or 4 of them at a time. And it didn't work. And hand up, because I pushed and pushed, like, I want to see this happen. Now, once it didn't happen, I think we all were like, okay, did see it happen, but it didn't work. It's like, okay, it didn't work. Thank you for finally trying. But things then started to click once you went to Jae'lyn Withers and Van Allen Lubin in the front court. Then that meant that Drake Powell is your starting 3, and you're not changing from starting RJ Davis at the 2. And so it was a function of roster construction where Ian was the odd man out. Now, does that change next year? Probably so. But in this portal era, and I'm not saying this is Ian or just Ian, I'm just saying this is what, if it's not there at the level you thought it would be from an opportunity standpoint, a lot of people are out. And that logjam, man, that contributes to it. So then the final question before we move on would be, where does Ian ultimately land? I mean, my gut reactions right out of the gate, and that's all I've put into it at this point. I'm sure we'll see a list start coming out probably on Tuesday, but are Kentucky and St. John's. And here's why I thought that. Kentucky was the school we all thought Ian was going to go to when he committed to North Carolina. Literally woke up the morning of his commitment thinking it would be Kentucky, and it was literally through the course of that day, it was like, actually, it's flipped, and he's going to go to North Carolina. Okay, great. St. John's, that's a school that's back up in his stomping grounds, his neck of the woods. St. John's is resurgent under Rick Pitino. There's a lot of possibility there. Simeon Wilcher's there, who was supposed to be part of this class with him. Or excuse me, last year's freshman class. But it's not working. And so he ends out the door. Well, that means though, like, hate to see it happen, but it is happening. And so we got to talk about what's next for Carolina. So we're going to look ahead to that. We'll look at the scholarship chart and much more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, there is nothing, and I mean nothing, like the energy of a live game. Coach Rob has already been talking to me about the energy of the Final Four in the Alamo Dome Saturday. I mean, it sounds absolutely crazy. So whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown, soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup, or just being there for the NCAA tournament semifinals, man, it's great to do that. But finding tickets at a great price, that used to be a chore and a challenge until I learned about Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the actual whole total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. Let me tell you a couple reasons about why I love Game Time. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for things like sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They've also got things like last-minute seats where you can grab these things with a thing they have called zone deals, where you just find the zone and it shows you there and you go with that. They also, at Game Time, have views from your seat before you buy, so you can see what it looks like from where you will actually be sitting. They've also got a lowest price guarantee. And with that, man, you can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I want to talk about what's next for Carolina in the wake of this Ian Jackson news, but one other word I do want to say first. I cannot get on board with this is a no good, awful, terrible, really bad look for North Carolina crowd. I hear it and I see it and I understand it. But this is happening all over the country. This is not a unique problem to the University of North Carolina. Maybe, if you go and do the research, maybe there's a higher volume of 5 stars that leave North Carolina. Okay, if that's the case, great. And I've seen the graphics, and I know, and I've looked into it myself because I'm a research guy. It's what I care about and do. I hear that. But sometimes when you get these guys out, it makes sense. Sometimes it just does not. And like one way or the other, what happened on Monday to North Carolina is something that unmistakably is happening all over the country. I don't know why there's a narrative being painted that it's unique to Carolina and North Carolina is awful because of it, when literally there are 31 conferences in Division One. I quit counting when I got to 10 conference players of the year that entered the transfer portal. So it's probably more than that at this point. But that includes like RJ Lewis, the reigning Big East Conference Player of the Year. He transferred. Just the same as Carolina. It's tough to deal with. So anyone who wants to try to paint that picture for you that this is unique to Carolina or that Carolina's in some kind of hot water, they're trying to paint a narrative that's just simply not true. Again, it's happening everywhere. Henry Vasar, him entering the portal was a complete surprise to Arizona. They were shocked. Rob Wright III from Baylor just entered the portal on Monday. I have talked to multiple Baylor people since then, and it was a shock and a surprise, and somebody they had built their team around. I still want him, though. And we'll talk about that upcoming shows this week. But all that to say, like, it is not just Carolina. So stop it. Stop it with the narrative that we are on an island of futility, because it ain't just us, man. It's happening everywhere. But so, Isaac, are you saying this is a good look? No, I'm not saying this is a good look. It's not. Not at all. Obviously, it's not. It's not great anytime anyone pieces out. But those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Just because it's not a good thing doesn't mean that it has to be a bad thing. It can just be a thing. And vice versa, just because it doesn't have to be a bad thing doesn't mean that it has to be a good thing. Again, it can just be a thing, a present reality that we are living with. And it can exist between good and bad. It's nebulous. Okay, there's all that. But the question becomes, all right, what now? Isaac, what happens? Because we've been looking at this scholarship chart, and yes, you better believe I'm about to show it again. I don't know why I just accidentally pulled up FaceTime for some reason instead of what I actually needed here, which was this. I was going to pull up the scholarship thing, but I, for some reason, didn't upload. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to have to use the one. I do have the one in here from Vasar's commitment. So just imagine this doesn't say Ian Jackson on it, right? So Carolina loses a shooting guard, somebody that can play a little bit of 3 as well, right? Like you could consider Ian, like if we're dividing the team into 3 position groupings of backcourt, wing, and front court, Ian's somebody that can play 2 out of those 3. And so for me, the key focus right now is still got to be on point guard. I think that's critical. You got your big, now you need the point guard. But I also think that now there does become a more urgent necessity to land more shooting as well. There are options out there in the portal, but again, like right out of the gate in the portal, I was like, Isaac McNeely, I want him, I need him, get him to Carolina. I would absolutely love it if he was a Tar Heel right now. Love it. But it didn't happen. He's at Louisville. I also think this is a moment in the so what now, where from both a resume standpoint and a narrative standpoint, because we don't want to go through this again, it's critical for Drake Powell to either just go straight to the NBA or stay at Carolina. Or test and come back to Carolina. That's fine too. I just mean not lose Drake Powell to the transfer portal. And it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but that's where we're at. And I'm like, oh man. So the what now for me, summed up, got to keep pursuing point guard first and foremost, but let's not forget the shooting that we need at the 2 position. There are some guys, right? Like Isaiah Dennis is coming in. Derek Dixon is coming in with a great reputation as a shooter. Jonathan Powell, I expect him to come in and shoot some, but I want more. I am greedy and I want the shooting. So give me more of it. Ian Jackson, gone. Man, I'm still wrapping my head around it. Honestly. It's crazy. I put up a little short on social media and on YouTube about it, and it was just like, that's just kind of where I was at. Like, okay, the transfer point, right? Like that's just how I was dealing with it. But that's that. Okay, now it may be the day after the 2024-25 college basketball season has officially ended, and we may be neck deep in transfer portal stuff, and we'll get back to that tomorrow. But right now, there is a whole bunch of non-conference news just coming out right now. And so we got to get to that because you can basically construct almost a third of Carolina's season already. The whole non-conference, just about. We'll get to that and talk about it in just a second. It's kind of nuts to say it, but as we sit here on Tuesday, April 8th, we are, just shy of 7 months away from the season starting, but we've already got a lot of the non-conference portion of the schedule. Let me remind you before we dive into it, how schedules are put together in college basketball. Right now, you're allowed 31 total games. That's actually an off-season conversation I'd like to have. I want more, and I'll explain why. But right now, you get 31 non-conference games, 31 regular season games, unless you play a game at a Hawaii or at an Alaska school, as Carolina did last year. Remember, they played at Hawaii on the way out to Maui. Those games are exempt and means you can play 32 games. Carolina did that last year, but this year it reverts back to 31. As you know, Carolina will play 20 ACC games. And if you're good at math, and even if you're not, you should be able to figure out that leaves 11 games for the non-conference portion of the schedule. We're not going to look at anything ACC slate right now. I just want to set up the beginning of the non-conference portion of the schedule conversation because by my count, and there might be something I'm missing, but by my count, we have knowledge of 8 of Carolina's 11 non-conference games already. And sort of 9 in a roundabout way. I'll say more about that in a second. I'm going to take you through them chronologically. Number 1, Monday, November 3rd, Carolina is hosting Central Arkansas. It's a $90,000 buy game. This is reported, as almost all of this was, by Made for March on Twitter, who through the years has proven to me to be accurate. So we're, I know there's a hey, it's not official till you hear it from Carolina official, but always well sourced and always does a great job. Second, Tuesday, November 11th, Carolina will be hosting Radford, also announced by Made for March on Twitter. This game is an $85,000 buy game. So that's your first 2 that's on the schedule right now. Anyway, the third game, Friday, November 14th. You better know what this one is. It is the back end of the home and home with Kansas. Remember, Carolina went out to the Fog this year back in November on the second Friday of the season, lost a heartbreaker to Kansas after the first comeback of what were many attempted comebacks this season. And we, at that point, had no idea what was to come. Next game after that, Monday, November 18th against Navy. This was also reported by Made for March. Carolina hosting Navy. The one caveat I've got to say here, it was reported as Monday the 18th, but Monday of that week is the 17th, and Tuesday of that week is actually the 18th. So something's slightly off there, but I mean, it sounds like it's either Monday or Tuesday of that week. So you can trust that, and hopefully, we'll eventually find out. Next game that we have on the calendar already is Carolina's kind of MTE. They're not doing a 3-game MTE this year, but they'll be participating in the Fort Myers tip-off. And on Thanksgiving Day, this one has been announced since back of November last year, so you probably already know it. Carolina will be playing yet again Michigan State. Actually, on Thanksgiving Day, remember last year, college basketball, we had Arkansas against Illinois following out of I want to say the Bears game, because it was Illinois. I remember talking about the synergy of the NFL and the college basketball game having some overlap. And I believe this Carolina-Michigan State game comes right after the Lions game, if I'm not mistaken. So there's the Michigan synergy there. Now, Fort Myers tip-off is typically an event with 4 teams. You just play who's preordained in the semifinal, and then you move into either the winners or the losers bracket, and that's your 2 games. The other 2 teams have not yet been announced for this. Last year, these games were Monday and Wednesday of Thanksgiving week, but Carolina has already been announced as playing Michigan State on Thanksgiving Day. And so I would imagine then if the break-in schedule holds, Carolina would play a second game at Fort Myers on Saturday. Or maybe it's Friday and they adjust the schedule. We don't know, but that's what it's looking like. And last year, it was all power conference schools: Michigan, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, and Xavier. We'll see if that trend holds or if Players Era Festival eats everyone. So there's that. So that is that mystery kind of 9th game. So that is the second game of the Fort Myers tip-off. So we know something about 9 of Carolina's 11 non-con games. 6, or really 7th, I guess now. On December 22nd, that's a Monday, Carolina is hosting ECU. This is an $85,000 buy game, and that was also reported by Made for March on Twitter. Next, ACC SEC Challenge. We know that's going to be a thing. It'll be year 3 of that. As a reminder, the SEC absolutely cooked the ACC last year, 14-2. The year before that, it was split 7-7 when there were only 14 teams in the SEC. Now, in terms of date of this event, the last 2 years, the first 2 years of it, it has been the Tuesday and Wednesday after Thanksgiving. That said, if they stick to precedent, this event should be on Tuesday, December 2nd and Wednesday, December 3rd. One thing to keep in mind is that Carolina will almost certainly be on the road because they were at home each of the first 2 years of this event, hosted Tennessee 2 years ago and Alabama this previous season. So I'm imagining Carolina is going to be on the road and either playing on Tuesday, December 2nd or Wednesday, December 3rd. Finally is the CBS Sports Classic. We don't know the location for it yet. That's TBD. And typically this event from a dating standpoint is the 3rd Saturday in December. So it should be Saturday, December 20th, leading into Christmas there. By the rotation of how things go, it should be an Ohio State year. Carolina just played UCLA, Kentucky the year before that, and Ohio State back 3 years ago now. And so I expect Ohio State to be the opponent in December of 2025. So there is that. And that means if all of that holds, There's just 2 other non-con games to learn about because that's 9. 8 specific, 8 games that have something about them and one that's like, hey, yeah, one of the other teams from Fort Myers tip-off. Now, interestingly, one of the things we've talked a lot about is how Carolina is going to construct their construct their schedule going forward. Are they going to continue to schedule like basically murderer's row? My hope is that they won't. Now, of these reported bye games from Made for March, you've obviously got the Kansas game, you've got the Michigan State game, ACC, SEC Challenge, and CBS Sports Classic. That's already 4 difficult games. But of the others that we know about right now, Carolina hosting Central Arkansas, hosting Radford, hosting Kansas, hosting Navy, and hosting ECU. So that is, first off, 5 non-con home games. One of those is Kansas, though, but 4 bye games specifically: Central Arkansas, Radford, Navy, and ECU. So what I'm curious to see is with those kind of last 2 games, what does Coach Davis do? How does he want to get Carolina reps and opportunities? Is it with low to mid-major schools so that the guys can just continue to get their feet wet? Is it, he's talked about wanting to get up to MSG every year. Is that a thing? Does that happen? Lots to talk about there, but for now, this is what we know, and it's really interesting, and I can't wait to learn the rest of it because those are the kind of things that start getting me excited for the next year already. Of like, woo, we're talking all this portal stuff, and I want to know who we're playing, right? So I get really excited about that. So big thanks to Made for March for their great reporting as always on that. All right, guys, tough day. Ian Jackson gone. I feel like the fan base isn't as divided as Elliott on this, but is quite divided, more shockingly than I thought they would be on wanting Ian to stay and wanting Ian to not stay. It kind of is befuddling to me. Interesting. But that does it for the show. If you've not subscribed on YouTube, do that right now so you don't miss a second. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you there. That link is in the show notes. And also, join us in the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, where I'm dropping portal rumors and all sorts of great stuff all the time, but exclusively there. I'm not dropping it in the Locked On Tar Heels Discord or anywhere else. So that's the only place you would find all of that information. All right, guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll get this roster thing figured out. Don't you worry. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.